Today, we're going to get inside the mind of a man who didn't just write the rule book for modern business. You could argue he basically invented the game itself, Peter Drucker. You see, his whole philosophy was forged in the ashes of a collapsing world, and it was so powerful that it's still the invisible engine driving pretty much every successful organization on the planet. He taught us one profound, almost deceptively simple lesson. In the constant battle between growth and chaos, clarity always, always wins. And let me tell you, understanding that one principle can change everything about how you work and how you lead. So picture this. It's the middle of World War II. GM isn't just making cars, it's the arsenal of democracy, this massive industrial empire churning out war machinery. When they invite this young, kind of unknown Austrian economist inside, they're probably expecting a report on production lines, supply chains, the nuts and bolts of the operation. But Drucker does something totally radical. He walks right past the boring assembly lines, past the stacks of spreadsheets, and he just starts talking to people. Managers, executives, the folks on the line. And what he found was that the real problem, the thing holding this industrial giant back, had absolutely nothing to do with the machines. It was buried in the human systems, the communication, the decision-making, the very way people were organized to work together. And that single insight right there sparked the central question of his entire life's work. In a world that's drowning in complexity with a million moving parts, a world that, let's be honest, sounds a lot like ours today, what did Peter Drucker see about chaos that everyone else was missing? What was his secret for turning all that messy, disorganized human energy into focused, effective results? Well, that's the big question we're going to answer as we unpack his incredible framework. So here's how we'll break it down. We'll start with a problem he first saw at General Motors. Then we'll get into the pretty dramatic history that shaped his entire philosophy. From there, we'll dig into his elegant solution, the clarity principle, and the practical tools he built to actually use it. And finally, we'll take a look at the amazing legacy he left for all of us. Okay, so let's go back inside General Motors in the 1940s. For 2 full years, Drucker was basically a ghost in the machine. He's walking the factory floors, sitting in on these high-stakes executive meetings, and just interviewing managers at every single level. And what he came back with wasn't just some internal report. It was a bombshell that would challenge the entire logic of the industrial age. He gave the enemy a name: unexamined complexity. And that's just a brilliant phrase, isn't it? He basically argued that the biggest threat to any organization isn't a competitor or a broken piece of tech. Nope. The biggest threat is internal. It's that slow, creeping chaos of tangled communication, fuzzy roles, competing priorities, and just wasted human effort. I mean, think about it. This was his big aha moment. The whole point of an organization is to make people's strengths productive and make their weaknesses not matter. But unexamined complexity does the exact opposite. It actually magnifies our weaknesses and smothers our strengths, making it almost impossible for people to do their best work. But to really get why Drucker was so obsessed with order and clarity and effectiveness, you have to understand where his ideas came from. Because they weren't dreamed up in some quiet boardroom or a university library. They were forged in the fire of one of the darkest times in human history. You see, Drucker grew up in 1930s Vienna, which was this incredible hub of intellectual life in Europe. And he watched in total horror as that world just fell apart. He saw firsthand how a stable, civilized society could be systematically taken down, consumed by the madness of totalitarianism. As a Jewish intellectual, he had to flee for his life, first to London, then to America. He didn't just read about institutions collapsing, he lived it. And that trauma burned a belief into his soul that he carried for the rest of his life. That well-run, effective, and ethical organizations, businesses, nonprofits, hospitals, weren't just about the economy. They were the very foundation of a free and functioning society. For Drucker, management wasn't about making a profit. It was the last line of defense between civilization and complete chaos. And that is exactly why he saw management as something so much bigger than just making money. He called it a liberal art, a discipline that didn't just require technical skills, but a deep understanding of people, of responsibility, of ethics. He believed these principles applied to anything, from the biggest company in the world to the local hospital down the street. Because of the chaos he'd seen, Drucker knew, down to his bones, that for an organization to last, it had to be a healthy human community first. The profits, the economic engine, that was a byproduct of a healthy community, not the other way around. So, with this really profound sense of purpose, Drucker came up with this elegant solution to the whole problem of chaos in organizations. It's a simple idea, but it kind of flips conventional wisdom on its head. He called it the clarity principle, and the motto is simple: clarity beats chaos. Now, at the heart of this is a really important difference that, honestly, most organizations still get wrong today: the difference between effectiveness and efficiency. Let's break that down. Efficiency is about doing things right, doing them faster, cheaper, with less waste. It's about optimizing the assembly line. But effectiveness? That's about doing the right things. It's about making sure that assembly line is actually producing something that matters. Drucker's genius was pointing out that there is nothing more useless than being incredibly efficient at something that shouldn't be done at all. That is the ultimate waste. He built this whole principle on 3 main pillars. First up is management by objectives, or MBO. This is the simple but kind of revolutionary idea that everybody, from the CEO down to the new intern, has to understand the big goals and, more importantly, how their specific job helps hit those goals. It just aligns everyone. The second pillar is the entrepreneurial mandate, and this one's tough for a lot of people. It's the discipline of systematic, planned abandonment. That means you have to actively kill off projects, products, old ways of doing things that just aren't working anymore, so you can free up your best people and your best resources for what's next. And finally, there's the priority filter. This is more of a mindset, a constant, nagging question you have to keep asking. Of all the things we could be doing, what's the one thing that truly matters right now? It's all about finding that leverage point, the one action that will create the biggest impact. Now, this is where Drucker gets really powerful, because he wasn't just some philosopher in an ivory tower. He was a super practical guy. He knew a great idea is useless if you don't have the tools to actually use it. So he designed these simple, elegant systems to help anyone turn this philosophy of clarity into a set of daily habits. His main system is what we can call the effectiveness protocol. The best way to think about it is like a daily self-audit. It's a quick mental check-in that's designed to snap you out of that autopilot of just being busy and force you to focus on what is actually mission critical. And this whole thing is built around one single deceptively simple question. And here it is. What can I contribute that will significantly affect the performance and results of the institution I work for? Let's just pause for a second on how brilliant that wording is. He doesn't ask what's on my to-do list or what are my tasks. He asks about contribution. That one word creates this massive mental shift. It moves your focus from activity to impact. It pulls you out of the mindset of being a passive employee just checking off boxes and puts you into the mindset of a leader who's responsible for creating real results. This slide right here perfectly captures the daily battle that we are all in. On the left, you've got the siren song of busy work. We all know this feeling, right? That endless cycle of clearing out the inbox, the back-to-back meetings that go nowhere, the little tasks that make you feel productive but don't actually move the needle. And then on the right, you've got real contribution. This is the deep work, the stuff that directly impacts the organization's most important goals. Asking that contribution question every single morning acts like a filter. It gives you the clarity and, frankly, the courage to say no to the stuff on the left so you have the time and energy for the real work on the right. The second tool Drucker gave us is even more direct, and for a lot of us, it's way more confronting. It's called the Systematic Time Audit and Elimination. Drucker's logic here was just flawless. Time is the single most valuable, most limited resource any of us have, and yet it's the one we manage with the least amount of discipline. His solution was brutally simple. You can't even hope to manage your time until you know where it's actually going, based on cold, hard data. So he laid out this simple exercise. For a few weeks, you just meticulously log your time, just like in this simple table here. Every 15 or 30 minutes, you write down what you were actually doing. Then comes the hard part. You look at that log and you ask 2 ruthless questions for every single thing you did. First, what would happen if this just wasn't done at all? If the answer is nothing, you stop doing it, eliminate it. Second, which of these things could be done by someone else just as well, if not better? If you have an answer, you delegate it. Look, the point isn't to make you feel bad. It's to give you objective data. It forces you to confront the huge gap between what you say your priorities are and how you actually spend your time. The result is you systematically get rid of low-value work, which is the only way to free up big chunks of time for real contribution. So when you put these powerful principles together with these super practical tools, you start to see how Peter Drucker became way more than just a famous consultant. He really became the architect of our modern world of work. His impact is so deep and so widespread that it's almost invisible now, because his ideas have become the very water we all swim in. I mean, think about it. Before Drucker, management was just this vague art form based on gut feelings and charisma. He basically single-handedly turned it into a serious, systematic discipline that you could study and teach and master. It was Drucker who came up with the term knowledge worker way back in the 1950s, because he saw the future wouldn't depend on the strength of our backs, but on the productivity of our minds. His idea of management by objectives is now the default setting for almost every major corporation in the world. And maybe his most important lesson is this beautiful paradox, that clear structures and systems and discipline don't kill creativity and freedom. They are the very things that make them possible. By taking care of the basics, structure creates the space for real innovation to happen.
So, if we had to boil Peter Drucker's entire life of wisdom down to one single, actionable lesson for us, it's this: true effectiveness is never, ever the result of just working longer or harder. It is the direct result of relentless, disciplined, and often courageous prioritization. It's about having the wisdom to see the very few things that create the most value, and then having the courage to ignore or get rid of everything else.
And that brings us to what might be his most famous quote, the one that perfectly sums up his entire philosophy. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. It's the ultimate call to action, right? A powerful reminder to just pause before you jump into any task and ask yourself that contribution question. Am I just about to be busy, or am I about to be effective? In the end, Peter Drucker built his legacy on the truth that management is a human responsibility, not just a financial equation. He gave us the Drucker Principle, a timeless way to transform organizational chaos into clarity by always prioritizing effectiveness over just being efficient. He taught us that the right structure is what unlocks true freedom, and that asking the right questions is so much more important than having all the answers. And he left us with an immutable rule of leadership, a final guiding thought for anyone who wants to make a real impact. What gets measured gets managed, but only what is important gets done.